OpenAI just offered the United States government something almost no tech company ever has, a 5% ownership stake in one of the world's most powerful artificial intelligence companies. And they did it not to celebrate, but to buy their way out of trouble. This isn't a partnership announcement or a funding round. This is a Silicon Valley company essentially surrendering partial control to Washington in exchange for political breathing room. Why would one of the hottest AI companies do this? Because the pressure from regulators, politicians, and geopolitical rivals has become so intense that even Sam Altman thinks sharing power is better than losing it all. The 5% stake sits right on the line between genius strategic play and desperate gamble, and it tells us everything about how completely the relationship between tech and government has shifted in 2026. No AI company has ever thought this was necessary before. The fact that the world's leading AI lab is now willing to hand Washington a permanent seat shows just how much fear is driving corporate strategy. This isn't just about money or influence anymore. This is about survival and legitimacy when government approval has become as valuable as venture capital. And here's where it gets interesting. OpenAI might actually win this gamble. To understand why Altman made this move, you need to see the perfect storm Washington has been creating around AI for the past 2 years. The geopolitical clock started ticking when DeepSeek and other Chinese AI labs began producing models that rivaled OpenAI's systems in real capability. Suddenly, Congress paid attention. National security hawks pointed at China and said, "Look, they are closing the gap. If we don't move now, they'll dominate the technology that matters most in the 21st century." Meanwhile, regulators piled on different kinds of pressure from every direction. The Federal Trade Commission was asking questions about OpenAI's corporate structure and whether the company truly prioritized safety. The Biden administration released executive orders about AI governance. States drafted their own AI laws. Every week brought new hearings, new bills, new scrutiny from somewhere. Altman spent 2 years essentially on Capitol Hill, testifying before Congress and lobbying for favorable regulation. But by mid-2026, it became crystal clear that lobbying alone wasn't going to cut it. The Trump administration came in with its own agenda on AI and genuine uncertainty. Would they be friendly to Silicon Valley or hostile? Would they back American AI companies against China or regulate them into weakness? The safest bet was to take the uncertainty completely off the table by voluntarily offering the government a permanent seat at the strategic table. So what exactly does 5% ownership actually mean for the federal government? First, it's real ownership, meaning the United States becomes a minority shareholder in OpenAI, just like any venture capital firm or institutional investor. That comes with board observer rights or potentially a formal board seat, depending on how the deal is structured behind closed doors. Second, it buys legitimacy in a way lobbying never could. When Washington literally owns part of OpenAI, it's much harder for China or hostile politicians to argue the company is acting against American national interests. Third, it gives the government insider visibility into how the most advanced AI systems are actually being built at scale. Treasury officials, defense officials, and intelligence officials can see exactly what OpenAI is building, what safety measures are in place, and what capabilities are being developed before the public knows. But here's the crucial part that changes everything. This isn't the same as the government taking control of the company's decisions. 5% is a minority stake, not a majority. OpenAI still makes all the real strategic decisions. The government still has to work through normal regulatory channels if it wants to restrict what OpenAI does. What this actually does is eliminate the adversarial tone between the company and regulators. It's partnership framing instead of regulatory cage match. Both sides get what they actually want. This isn't completely unprecedented in how government manages critical technology companies, though it's genuinely rare in consumer tech. Look at the defense contractor world, where companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman have spent decades managing government relationships through what's essentially a structured partnership model. Government buys their products, government audits their systems constantly, and government officials rotate in and out of company leadership roles regularly. It works because both sides have perfectly aligned incentives around national security. In the nuclear energy sector, the federal government maintains stakes in various uranium companies and reactor manufacturers because national security absolutely requires it. In telecommunications, AT&T and major carriers have maintained close relationships with federal agencies for decades precisely because the infrastructure is too critical to national security to leave completely independent. What's genuinely different about OpenAI is that this is the first time artificial intelligence, arguably the most strategically important technology in the world right now, is going through this formalization process in real time. OpenAI is essentially becoming the AI equivalent of a defense contractor overnight. The government is saying, if you want to build the most advanced AI in the world, you'll do it with us as a stakeholder watching every move. This sets a massive precedent for how all emerging critical technology will be governed. OpenAI's move puts enormous pressure on every single other AI company competing in this space right now. Microsoft has a completely different strategy. They are deeply embedded in defense and government work already through their massive cloud infrastructure contracts, so they are far less vulnerable to this specific pressure. Meta has tried to stay out of regulatory crosshairs by focusing on consumer products rather than pure enterprise AI capability. Google finds itself in a weird position. They've got so much government business already through their cloud division that they are almost as entangled as OpenAI is now choosing to be voluntarily. Anthropic, the startup that competes directly with OpenAI on the safety angle, has positioned itself as the safety-first alternative. They might be next to face pressure to accept similar government involvement or explain why they won't cooperate. The real question is whether Altman's move becomes the industry standard or remains a unique OpenAI deal. If every AI lab accepts government stakes, you get centralized oversight and coordinated security. If it's just OpenAI, then OpenAI gets exclusive special status, and every competitor gets pressure from Washington to either match the deal or explain publicly why they won't cooperate with national security requests. Either way, the entire competitive playing field has shifted permanently. The era where American AI companies could operate completely independent from government is absolutely over. That's true regardless of whether government takes equity at every company or just at OpenAI. Here's what this deal actually means for how AI gets regulated going forward and what happens next. First, it gives the Trump administration direct leverage over OpenAI without needing to pass any new laws through Congress. They've got an observer literally in the room. That's asymmetric power. OpenAI has to consider federal preferences and national security concerns, but also gets to claim it's doing this voluntarily and cooperatively. Second, it could actually accelerate regulations that specifically favor American AI companies over foreign competitors. When government is literally invested in OpenAI's financial success, there's a strong incentive to write rules that protect it from Chinese AI competition. You might see tariffs on Chinese AI chips, restrictions on foreign AI models being deployed in the United States, or other protectionist measures dressed up as national security concerns. Third, it fundamentally changes the competitive dynamics between closed commercial AI and open-source community AI. If regulators become nervous about open-source models being stolen by adversaries, they might restrict their development significantly. That would tilt the entire field toward closed proprietary models run by companies the government can monitor directly, like OpenAI and other approved vendors. Finally, it sets a precedent for how other critical tech sectors might be governed going forward. If AI requires government stakes, what about quantum computing or biotechnology? Defense contractors already work this way, but now it's spreading into commercial tech systematically. So what should you actually pay close attention to as this deal unfolds over the coming months and years? First, watch the detailed terms of the deal very carefully. How much actual influence does 5% by the government? A formal board seat with voting rights or just observer status? Does the government have veto power over anything? Can they block certain product launches or research directions? Second, Watch what every other AI company does in response. Do they voluntarily offer similar stakes too, or do they actively resist this model? That response tells you whether this was Altman's genuine long-term strategy or a forced move under government pressure. Third, watch for Chinese retaliation and how quickly China's AI labs respond. Beijing absolutely won't be happy about the United States government owning part of the company that's currently winning the AI race. They might accelerate their own AI development dramatically or try to recruit OpenAI researchers to move to China. Fourth, watch Congress carefully to see if this deal is a substitute for formal AI regulation or just the first step toward much stronger legal requirements. Congress might still pass comprehensive AI governance laws that go way beyond what government ownership accomplishes by itself. Finally, watch the stock market and venture capital. OpenAI isn't publicly traded yet, but when they eventually go public, that 5% stake will be worth tens of billions of dollars to American taxpayers. That completely changes the political calculus around whether Congress protects OpenAI. Here's what this change actually means going forward. The tech landscape you're going to live in is changing in real time before our eyes. For decades, Silicon Valley operated on the foundational assumption that innovation moves fastest when government stays completely out of the way. Move fast, break things, ask for forgiveness later. That was the philosophy. That era is officially over now. The companies building the most powerful technologies are being managed as quasi-public utilities with government oversight and partnership. They'll have more resources, more legitimacy, and more protection from foreign competition. But they'll also have far less freedom to operate independently. This deal signals that the United States government has decided it simply cannot afford to let OpenAI fail because it's too strategically important to national security. That's a massive competitive advantage for OpenAI, but it's also enormous responsibility. Altman is no longer just running a private company, he's running infrastructure that the federal government directly depends on. That changes absolutely everything about how he makes strategic decisions going forward. If you're using OpenAI products, following this company closely, or invested in artificial intelligence's future, this is the exact moment to understand what's shifting in real time. The relationship between tech and government isn't adversarial anymore. It's partnership. Government gets visibility into cutting-edge AI development. OpenAI gets stability and protection. The real question is whether American innovation actually gets faster or slower when government gets this level of influence. That's what the next few years will prove. Follow for daily AI news.